Hey, I'm Agent Palmer. With me is Bill Sweeney, and we both read a book.
Welcome to the Wicked Theory Librarium, where every once in a while we'll get together and go deep on a reviewable property, comic book, TV series, movie, maybe even real books. You remember real books. Joining me this time, Agent Palmer. Agent Palmer, say hello.
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 Hello. Yes.
So
Yes.
this theme music in the background is actually not going to be a regular opening for these, but it's tied to the Coldest City. Palmer, would you like to give a brief, quick, what are we doing here? What is this book?
Yeah, so as any Wicked Theory listener might know, we a while back we covered a trailer for Atomic Blonde. And Atomic Blonde is based off of a graphic novel by Antony Johnston called The Coldest City.
The Coldest City.
So Bill and I got copies of this book,
Mm-hmm.
and we read it separately, not together. That would have been a separate thing.
That would have been warm. That would have been a warm city. Snuggly city. That would have been a totally different thing.
And now we're going to discuss it.
That's crazy.
I know.
It's madness. So that's basically how this came together, and we decided to kind of maybe make it a series, an occasional reoccurring series where we go deep into the Wicked Theory repository of stuff. If you would have it that way. Well, that was a mouthful of mumbles. But that's the idea.
But all of them words.
And all of it true. I mean,
yes.
When you think about it. So. Yeah, we decided why not. And so we're going to kind of break this one down a little bit. Obviously, it's not in comparison to the movie. We're going to try not to do that, and we'll get into why later on. But we're going to try to give this thing a fair shake as it is. People should know, if they're interested in finding the book, that there is a prequel, sequel situation where it has a book that's a follow-up, but it takes place before this one.
And we will get into that.
And we will get
because
into that
I read
too.
that one as well.
Right. And you read that one. I did not, but you're going to give us some breakdown on that as we go too. So if you're interested in knowing about the book and want a little feel for it, and I'm not sure how we're going to handle spoilers in a sense. We're probably going to give it away. We'll
try not to.
We'll try not to. And if we do, we'll try and figure out a thing in the description of the episode to let you know where we do give it away, and you can jump ahead. I'll put like a time code of from here to here. Jump, you could jump ahead, and that's a safe zone, I guess. How about that? We'll go with that.
So I figured we'll start with this directly from the back cover. As communism collapses and the Berlin Wall crumbles, an undercover MI6 agent spy is killed while carrying priceless information, a list containing the name of every spy in Berlin, but no list is found on his body. MI6 sends veteran operative Lorraine Broughton to recover the list, but she walks into a powder keg of social unrest, counter-espionage, defections gone bad, and secret assassinations.
Ooh. So the story takes place in 1988?
89. It actually... So, and this is like a tangential history lesson.
Okay.
But the story takes place in October of 1989. And the Berlin Wall falls in December of that year.
Right.
And this book takes place over the course of that.
Right. And actually, there's an air of that in the story because it's looming. All the characters know it's in the air. It's going to happen any second. So there's this added layer of time and pressure to the assignment that Lorraine is sent on. I do want to point out before we go any further, before I forget,
Yes.
that I did say, oh, that's not our intro music for this. That intro music is actually from, credit where credit is due, is from a book trailer for The Coldest City. So while I don't have any rights to give, who owns that? I just felt like, let's put that out there.
And anybody who wants either...
Oh, you can watch that video on YouTube to get a look at the artwork.
And the easiest place to find it, though, is it is embedded on the website, thecoldestcity.com.
There you go. Which is probably a great place to get more insight than we're giving.
Yes.
As of yet, anyway. So where were you?
You were in Germany.
You were in Germany. You were in Berlin.
Yeah, I was in Berlin at the Fall of the Wall. You know,
it's the name of my band. The Fall of the Wall.
The interesting thing here is, because it's the Fall of the Wall, we know it's basically the end of the Cold War. In hindsight,
right? The Cold War as we knew it at that time,
and that's where the unrest that is described in that little blurb on the back of the book, that's where it all comes in, because all these spies know it's all going to change.
Yeah.
And it's mentioned throughout the book. Like, that's not a spoiler. Like, we all know the wall comes down, and it's one of those things where it carries on. Like, I want to say like every 15 or 20 pages. Like, it doesn't go very far before somebody mentions like it's going to change, or
it might even be earlier than that, because since the framework of the story is that she's actually being debriefed after she's gotten back from this assignment, and we're seeing all of that assignment work in flashback, that it could have very well been in that opening sequence where it's like, sit down, we have to have the debrief, we want to have it right now because of XYZ, time is still of the essence, so let's just get right to it, rather than waiting around for you to write it up. Let's have a cool back and forth, let's make this interesting for people rather than watching you type. I think it's
Doogie
probably
Howser
in there.
style.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, remember that? Thank God it wasn't that option. But it was a thing where it's a nice technique. It's a nice format. They do a nice thing with the layouts, where when it's the present day,
it's got a white border to it, and
right,
as opposed to the debriefing room where it's got a black border.
Right, present day in the debriefing room has the black border, and the panels melt more into the shadows because it's black and white. And the artwork is really good. It's got this subtleness to it. It's got a kind of a, I don't know, is a soft touch, but it's rendered with subtlety. Like, it's not overly drawn. He plays a lot with the color, which is, just black and white, but he's doing a thing where,
little bits of detail, little bits of shadow.
Subtleties.
And it's not like super detailed shadow lines, whereas we've all seen them where like somebody does a really amazing shadow in black and white, and it's like a really thick line, and then a less thick line, and then a less thick line, all the way down into infinity, and that's the shadow. He really like minimalizes it. And
it doesn't look
talking
comic booky where it's a lot of like outlined figure poses and drawing like that. A lot of it's like edges of panels bleed into the white of what they call the gutters. That's the empty space in between panels. A lot of this kind of play in the artwork.
And that artwork is done by Sam Hart.
Who
has also done some stuff for like Starship Troopers, Judge Dredd, Outlaw, The Legend of Robin Hood, and Excalibur, The Legend of King Arthur.
Nice.
So, and just as an aside note, Stephen Perkins does the artwork for The Coldest Winter, which is the prequel we had talked about, and that is a very similar style.
Okay. Well,
it's almost hard to tell them apart, but I think it was a scenario where like maybe Hart wasn't available, and they were like, "This is the first book, but we really want to stick to this."
Yeah, that happens a lot. Where it's like,
especially because the prequel is literally 8 years prior, also in Berlin.
Right. And these books came out 2009. Well, I mean, Coldest City, 2012.
2012. Yeah.
2012.
So, but I did want to say, like, the one thing that struck me through this, for both books, but and it's really kind of littered throughout, and I think it's Johnston's writing style.
Okay.
Is he writes it in a very Len Dayton kind of a way where
I'm not familiar.
So that was the Ipcris file that, where I get my name, the Harry Palmer thing, but it was those things were supposed to be the anti-Bond, and that not everything was glorious and not everything worked out.
Sure.
And this book really has that. Like, there are guys, agents, spies that fucking hate their job.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's great about this is that it's none of that. It's none of the Bond. It's not Hollywood. It feels, well, first of all, I guess because it's got so much political kind of things hanging over it, but it does even feel like it's even earlier than the late 80s. Like, if I didn't know that and you didn't put those dates in and told me it was the 70s, like, it feels like it's got that kind of vibe to it, where it feels like a 70s kind of spy thing, where it's only about the mission. The story doesn't concern anything else, and the mission aren't James Bond missions. You know what I mean? These are like, the rudimentary basic stuff. These guys, they're there for years to just observe and report back, and it's the monotony and these things, and them trying to survive in their own way in this place. Because here's the underpinning thing that they mentioned back and forth is that, like, it's this kind of silent, secretive cat and mouse game in Germany, because there's spies from every country hanging out there right now. As of 1989, because it's I guess that's the place to be for the center of the Cold War.
And they mentioned that too. Like, it's like, you've never been to Berlin. No. Well, this is a different game. Like, it's almost like getting called up to the majors. Like, oh, you were just hanging in Paris, where there's like, a handful of spies all together, and now it's like, well,
and they're all at like the same
spies.
Bistro. They're all just having crumpets or scones or croissants. Most likely croissants, because that's actually French, not the other things.
But to that point, and I mentioned it when I read the back cover, that there's secret assassins, which is kind of tied to this list of every spy that Lorraine is supposed to go after. And I want to get to that list in a second. But before then, like, the whole reason, at least from reading the book, for there even being like a secret assassins kind of a thing, which the book kind of establishes as being multinational, like, that's just a thing that bored spies have started doing. It's not like those words, but that's the sentiment you get while you're reading, and it's like, all right, well, they must really have a lot of time on their hands in Berlin with so many. It's like that we've got nothing better to do than to set up a secret group of assassins across party lines to just build the time.
It's pre-internet, man. Like, there was no like, people did stuff with their time sometimes, like, you know what I mean? And sometimes it was very mundane stuff. Now we have a phone to that's what's probably killing a lot of the spy game, is like apps. It's like, were you playing with your phone the whole time, McGillicuddy? Like, you were in Beirut? Yeah, reception was horrible. I could barely get the updates. Yeah, okay. But you're right, though. It is a thing where it's like, and they don't get long-winded about just about anything, but you don't need to be, because if it's written well and the dialogue feels natural, then you'll infer so much onto a thing. So if only a person's only got to say one thing to become, to infer all of that you described. There's underlying tension, or
there's two other things. It's one, the dialogue and the because it's all dialogue. There's like no narrator in this, but the dialogue is simple, which marries itself with the artwork. But at the same time, Lorraine being sent to Berlin, there's the exposition you get is when she's talking to crap, I can't think of his name. Percival.
Right.
Who's the guy she's reporting to.
Right.
That's where we get our exposition.
Mm-hmm.
The guy she's reporting to is like, oh, you've never been to Berlin. Here's the lay of the land. And he doesn't, it's almost like he doesn't like her from the get-go because he doesn't explain the entire lay of the land. Like, he's not like, all right, this is what you do. This is like, she gets to make a few mistakes before he even like finishes explaining Berlin to her.
Well, also too, as that's the initial vibe that you're given of him, is that's why he's so cold. But it turns out that he's harboring secrets as much as anybody else, because here's the thing, it's turned out like for a lot of these spies, they've been ingrained in these areas for so long that they're pretty much trusted to be doing the right things and only working on the mission. And then it turns out that some of these guys are finding other ways to keep themselves occupied, and whether it ends up being that they double cross or they've made these deals on the side, or what the truths are and stuff. What's great is that you see her learning these little truths in the flashbacks in the moment, and then also in the room when her superiors are telling her, see, but that's not why he did that. And she's like, oh shit. And so the audience and her are both constantly recontextualizing what's going on at once a certain point of the story. Once they start telling her in the room, like, oh yeah, okay, well, oh, that's why you think that. Well, keep going, keep telling me more. I'll get back to it. One of the superiors at one point, he catches that she's, oh, okay, you didn't know everything. Finish telling your version, and then I'll tell you the truth in a minute, honey.
And in the debriefing room, one of the quotes is, most of the Allied officers in Berlin have been there for years with no embassy to watch over them. They've all gone bloody native, which to me is like the antithesis of, wait a minute, first of all, there's no fucking embassy. Like, I get it, but there's not even an embassy in like East Berlin. Like, I get it. You couldn't get one in West Berlin, where communism is king, but you couldn't even get one in the east side of the city. Like,
what's going on?
and at that, like, I could see how any new blood to any existing like spy in Berlin at that point is like, can I trust you? Like, I've got it sweet here. Like, there's no embassy. There's nobody looking over me. I could go on vacation. I could go across the street and chill out and not report in for 2 months. Like, nobody's going to care.
Which is a thing that like one of them was doing. He wasn't reporting in all the time. And, it's what's funny is that like when you look back on it, it's like, all right, they take this agent who's never been in this level of a, granted it's all fiction, but she's never been in something as high level as this, and they knowingly put her in there with only partial information, in a sense. Like, they know more than her, and then she's got to go in knowing that she doesn't have all the details, and then learning by inference, basically, that, oh shit, I really don't have all the details of what's going on here. And then by the end, you come to learn certain truths, and you're like, well, geez, like, what the heck was even going on here for a second? Like, what was she, what were people really maneuvering about? You know what I mean? It's one of these things where the double crosses and the layers, because people are moving and positioning themselves based on lies, based on other cover stories and shit. It's like, it's a wonder almost that like things play out like they do. I feel like, it's one of those kinds of situations. I might have gotten lost a little bit in that. I hope I didn't.
No. You're with it. And the other thing about it is, it's not like these guys or any of the characters are incompetent. Like, granted, they're going off the reservation or going native, but they're good at what they do, which is how they got to Berlin in the first place. Berlin is the major leagues at this point. This is the height of the Cold War, and I wonder, Bill. I'm younger than you, but I still remember.
Oh boy, here we go.
Like, no. I remember when the wall fell, and
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing about the Cold War, and like, I just wonder anybody who's like maybe younger than me, who doesn't remember the Cold War, aside from it being like just a thing.
Right.
Like, do you think we got more out of it? Like, and I say that because like we
Well,
know
here's
a
a
little bit more of what the book's not telling us,
well, here's a,
at least as far as the environment and the atmosphere.
well, it was good to see that because when I was younger, I couldn't contextualize it because it does feel like I was kind of young at the time. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 40 now. I don't know. I don't do math. It's not part of my job description.
Bill, I was
See,
6
see
when
how
the wall
hard it is.
fell.
You see how hard it is.
Yeah. I was 6 when the wall fell. I
Right.
think you were probably 11
Fair
or
enough.
12. But I mean, the point is,
about right,
I
actually.
remember watching it on TV. I might not have known it, but like and it's not like the wall fell and the Cold War ended.
Right, but that's how I'm trying to get to is that like you said that like for certain people at a certain age it's just this thing that's mentioned historically. For my age where I was at the time when that wall came down, it was just kind of a thing, like right up until the wall came down. Like right up until the wall came down, all of a sudden people were like, "Oh, that wall's going to come down." It was like riding in the streets. It was like an hour before it fell. It was like that's what it made its way through my little bubble as a kid. You know what I mean?
Hasselhoff is making his way to the wall so he can sing as it comes down.
He's going to stand on top as people try to hit him with a sledgehammer. But that's probably why the wall came down, was they were trying to push him out. They were like, "We're done with the Hoff. No more Hoff, please." And they were like, "We'll make a hole. We'll make a hole for the Hoff." But yeah, so for me, it was like one of these things where like by having it actually come down, it made it very real. It wasn't just this thing you heard mentioned or in history in class as a young kid. And then so instantly, well, not instantly, but with quick turnaround, it just kind of became a footnote again in that, way that things just kind of become, another history lesson. But yeah, I think that you make a good point that like by having it have some aspect of it happen, it made the Cold War real, or it showed this is a tangible outcome of it.
And you also have to remember, and I know from the Dayton stuff, because there was Funeral in Berlin, and I know he wrote a series of a bunch of other books that also kind of dabble in Berlin. Berlin was the hot spot of spies for, like, I called it the major leagues, but that's where there was like an American section and a regular, West or East German section, and then there were like I don't want to make this claim, but like it's almost like Jerusalem, where you think of Jerusalem and it's like there's the Muslim section, there's the Jewish section, there's the Christian section. Like there were literal different places in Berlin, and I think that's because they were all so close together. That's why everybody was there. And you almost need the history lesson if you don't know anything about it, because I think until we started talking about it now, like I guess I took that for granted, because those were all things that the simple art, the simple dialogue, the fairly straightforward story, all of that atmospheric detail is just stuff I know.
Right. No, yeah. So, well, not to be like, hey, did you learn anything? But since I feel like that's the next question for me, though, is like, so you ended up doing some research for this episode.
Yeah.
In a sense. Did you learn anything you didn't know? Were you surprised by anything you turned up? Was there any like little factoid where you were like,
you know what? Honestly, the biggest thing for me was that there, and maybe this is like the MacGuffin in every spy thing I've read so far.
Yeah, the list.
But there always, no, I wouldn't even talk about the list. There always seems to be a way to the other side of the wall. Like,
There's
you know
always
what I
an
mean?
underground
Like, it doesn't
passage
matter
or
what's going on. Like, there's like maybe it's like a clandestine road or something where like
Right.
spies can use it no matter what. But like, it doesn't matter if it was Dayton's funeral in Berlin or this or like even the prequel of this, The Coldest Winter. Like, it doesn't matter how fortified the wall is and how scared citizens are to cross it. Spies are just like, oh, I need to get to the other side. Done. Like, maybe they'll go into a little bit of detail, but like, I went underneath, I went in the sewer, or like, I dressed up as an old lady. They always get through.
Well, they got to get to the other side. It's one of these things about writing stories. Sometimes you got to paint yourself into a hole. And then the challenge is to see how your character gets out. And usually that's the moment, like a moment. Especially in a movie, it tends to be one of these moments where it's like, oh, let's figure out that's a place for high tension. Oh, can they get through the checkpoint? Oh, no. The guy doesn't like her papers. Oh, no. Oh, no. And then someone off to the side is like, Gultweg, we need you. And he's like, okay, you can go. They need me over here. I'm not sure what country that Gultweg is from, but it's probably Eastern Bloc.
You know what? Let's bring that up. There are panels upon panels in this book
Fair enough.
that are in German.
Yeah, you might need to brush up on your German.
Yeah, I kind of read through them and I was like, oh, I kind of know two of those words.
Yeah. Well, like that because of that 1/10 of English that is derived from German.
Yes. But beyond that, I kind of skipped through it. I wonder. I'm gonna tap Steph. Because I know Steph.
Yeah.
Can do German.
Stephanie Muniz from
Gotham Lights
podcast. Good friend.
I'm gonna have to tap her at some point to be like, hey, I need to know what this actually says. I don't think there's anything more. Like, I don't know if I'll get that much more out of it.
Well, here's the thing. I would have to presume, since most comics and graphic novels, what they'll tend to do is do like an in the word balloon. They'll put it in these brackets. The angled brackets, and that it's translated. They'll put the little asterisk, and then at the bottom of the panel.
Not in this one.
But not in this one. This is one of those books where it's like, we're going to make an executive decision, and either you know German or you don't, and if you don't, you'll get by without it.
Yes. Because
it didn't leave me, like, at no point was it like, oh, if I knew what the Germans were saying, like, this would all make sense. Like, it doesn't like leave you at any point where it's like, you need to go get a friend. But out of curiosity, it probably would add, an interesting layer,
And it's that side of it too. Mm-hmm. It's like you're following Lorraine, and although you see the other characters, because a lot of those other characters are speaking German, maybe it's just that we read fully the story and we know one side of the coin. And we just don't grasp
was it a thing where
her
German isn't really very good, right?
That was like an ongoing thing.
Was that her? That was another aspect. Her German wasn't very good. And now, when we see those characters speaking German, was that her seeing them or eavesdropping on them?
Some of the time. Sometimes it was just like a full page of like.
Well, I'm thinking that if it's from her perspective, maybe that's why we don't have it translated for us, because it wasn't translated for her in a sense in her mind. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she doesn't know what they're saying, so maybe we might have missed an angle on that, because I could see that being a thing where you'd have to sit there and think about it and break it down a little bit. But if it's all from her recollection, like, she would be telling them in the debriefing room that, like, well, then they were talking German about XYZ, and my German's no good, so, but in the matter of showing us, it makes a certain amount of logical sense if that's the case.
So, Bill, I have a question and an answer for you.
So why bother asking me?
Because they're unrelated.
Okay.
But they're related. No, the question I have for you is, what do you think about this list? Because this list of every spy in Berlin. Now, as we've talked about, like, it's literally the mecca of spies at this point in time during the Cold War. Like, that seems like in 1989 where there's no discs.
Yeah.
That, like, the list on this guy doesn't seem like it's just a piece of paper.
Well, here's the thing too. Like, I feel like if anything is like, for me, kind of pulled me out a little bit. It was the idea of her going after a list, because it's kind of a little bit of a trope, and as much as like it could very well back then, especially, been more plausibly a thing to have happen. That could be the case very well. I mean, I don't know if this is even based remotely on any true stories or any type of.
I didn't see anything about it.
Yeah, I kind of didn't think so. But it's a MacGuffin in a way. But it turns out, there's more to it by the end of the story. But that was a little thing for a moment that kind of put me out. I was like, oh, she's going for a list of all the agents. Like, don't let it fall into the wrong hands. It's, in modern day movies, spy stuff. It's like a thing. Yeah. It's like a thing we always go to, especially if we got a franchise. It's like, okay, in movie 1, we meet them and we have a great adventure. And then in movie like 2 or 3, it's like, oh no, they got the disc, they got the drive, they got the chip, they got the database, they got, they got the mailing list. Oh no, we're going to get junk mail to all the spies.
And that's my answer to you, Bill, is that, so the Coldest City takes place in 89. The Coldest Winter, which is the prequel, takes place in 81, I think, or 82, or crosses it. And that is, so that is basically Percival, her number one in the Coldest City. That is his introduction and transfer into Berlin. But on the website that we mentioned, the coldestcity.com, it has a list that is little information on both books. But on the information for the Coldest City, it says the Coldest City begins a new trilogy of spy thriller graphic novels by Antony Johnston. So I wonder if we're getting a third, because that list is still
unresolved in a way.
Unresolved. Like, she basically goes off. It's like, hey, I'm going after a list. Oh, wait, but there's this other thing I can look into. And she takes care of that. Right, and then we never really get back to it. So now he's written the sequel, which is the prequel that sets up, and you see some through lines, which are very nice. But there's still something out there if Johnston comes back.
Well, I think certainly the way this one ends, the way it literally ends, there's more to her to get into. When we get to the end of this, I don't know, but we should maybe, if we want to make speculations, but like, I wonder if that's a thing, if the ending of this will be reflected in the movie.
See, well, let's go there, because we've done a very good job of keeping it spoiler free, and we probably can for the rest of it. The reason this came about is because I saw the trailer for Atomic Blonde, and I was like, Bill, it's based off a graphic novel.
I was like, yeah.
And
well, let's talk about that, like the difference between the book and what we've seen of the movie so far, because that's a fair.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's exactly where you were going, but let's take it there first.
Like, let's take it. Yeah.
Let's compare first.
I'll lead to that.
Okay.
Which is just based on the trailer, and if maybe Bill and I'll do a straight up book to movie, real in depth thing.
We'll
maybe
see if you're good. See. If you're good.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I can't get into too much trouble down here. I mean, you let me in the Librarium.
Yeah. Well, that was only because I was going to be present. I don't let you in here when you're alone.
That's fair.
Adult supervision.
So, you get you see her in the trailer, like meeting with other operatives, and you see her like in the debriefing room. So I like the fact that it feels like they're at least going to take that from the book, where she's going to be debriefed, and it's going to be in like flashback where we get the story. But the main difference between this book and that trailer is all of the John Wick stuff.
Right.
Because in this book, it is, as I said, like almost at the top, like it's the boring spy stuff. Like you have to get into the story because there's not going to be an amazing fight scene or a shootout in this book. It's
Yeah.
all about the intel and the connections. And it's basically the chess match of one spy trying to outthink the other.
Well, what's great about it too is that it's a quick read. Like it's not, like a movie version of this, like a literal translation would be a slow burn kind of a thing. Which obviously got picked up by a different production house, so it's gone the way very much. The director of it is the guy who worked on John Wick. I don't know if it's the director of that or if he was just a fight choreographer. I'm not sure because I know the fight choreographers direct stuff too, I think. My point being that, the difference is high. So you can't really kind of go in expecting this book to be
what you see in the trailer.
Yeah. I mean, there is a fight in the staircase and, she does kick ass, but like, it's very different. It's much more grounded and real. And, besides being brief, it might be the only physical, besides like one other thing, maybe. I think there's only really like one or two hand-to-hand confrontations or fights, basically.
Yeah. And even the shooting is at a minimum.
Yeah. Even though it opens up with one, hey, but still.
But I will speculate this. It's possible, because I know Johnston's got a little bit involvement in the movie. It's possible that the third part of this trilogy is another movie.
Well, you never know.
Instead of doing, because that happens, and now we see it a lot more than we ever did before, where it's an author writes a book, it gets picked up as a movie, and then they bring the author back to work on the sequel, and that just becomes,
that's where all the ideas,
I'm already writing this.
Right,
why do I need to do it again?
Fair enough. Or maybe it's like, well, here are ideas I had for book 3.
Yep.
Which I'm going to do, but we could put them in this movie because this movie actually looks like it's got, John Goodman in it as an American.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there was any Americans in Germany that were in that position.
Yes, right? That's true. Although I think he's playing the boss who debriefs her.
Oh, okay.
So it's entirely possible that that's the case. But I did want to point out, though, if they did a direct sequel to this, as the website says it's a trilogy.
Yeah.
James McAvoy is playing David Percival. They can always go back and do the prequel with him whenever they want.
Yeah. Yeah. That might be part of it.
That's a thing where that's a solid actor. You don't I just get the feeling like if they weren't teasing the idea of doing The Coldest Winter as a movie, they wouldn't have signed the paycheck to get McAvoy.
And in the trailer, he's the crazy one, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, he's like, so different.
Yeah.
That like he is screaming that character is like screaming for his own movie. But whereas she strikes me in the movie in the trailer anyway as being the badass, martial arts expert. Like I don't know if that's like, is he going to have those scenes as well enough to establish him as,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like if we're going to make a sequel to this and it's about a different character, then people are going to be expecting a certain amount of John Wickitude.
Well, and I think that's it's a very interesting thing. And I feel like it kind of brings us close to the end, which is, so this book is very straightforward. It's spy fiction without it's the spy fiction genre unglorified.
Yeah,
really. It's not the Bond. It's not even the Harry Palmers of the world who still kind of end up getting the girl. It's not that. The movie basically takes this story and jumps it above almost to like a serious Austin Powers level.
Well, I'll say this.
Of a level.
I'll say this. The comic is much more noir. It's much more in a classic noir spy game. If you read comics and you're into like Brubaker or there's a couple other writers that kind of delve into the spy kind of angled. Like, Warren Ellis has done some runs on a couple of things maybe that will kind of fit in this. But my point being that this is much more of a spy noir, and the movie looks much more like, it's an action adventure spy story. You know what I mean? I think that's, the tones are totally different. And hey, if this story had maybe a little more action in the story itself, it probably would have had some cool beats and all, but it would have kind of started to become something different. So I'm kind of glad it didn't have a lot, you know what I mean? But a little more wouldn't have hurt it.
It is what it is, and I feel like it works in the spy genre.
Mm-hmm,
and I don't know if this is like a proper thing to say, but this is a very good gateway for like spy fiction readers who just like books to get into graphic novels.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
It's got the same beats as like a full spy fiction novel, without all of the extra. Like, it's almost that he wrote it as a spy fiction novel first and went, nah, I think I want to do this in graphic novel form.
Yeah, well, the difference in that, this is much more of a streamlined type thing, just by the nature of the format.
And it's very, it's very linear. I mean, despite the fact that it's all told in flashback, it's still a linear story. You're not going in circles, and
they don't jump back in time. Like, he's not like, well, what about the other day? And then like, we're now 3 days before the first, right? None of that, which is good. It doesn't. It's not about a lot of that kind of thing. Yeah.
But it is. It's a quick read, but by no means is that like a bad thing. Like, I know you said it to me, and I was like, yeah, we'll see about this. And then I was like reading for like 45 minutes, and then like I was like, oh, I might have to like get up and walk around. I don't like sitting down. And I was like, oh, I have like 30 pages left. I'm almost done. Like, screw it, I'm gonna finish it. Like,
well, it's 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 a testament to also, not that it's. Don't let that, if you're listening, don't let that imply to you that it's a simple read or that it's, like a dismissive trait. But it also is, it moves. You know what I mean? So it's like, it doesn't bog you down with extraneous, conversation and over explanation and stuff like that. Like, terminology is not broken down for you. Like, if you don't get when they're talking about Burr 1 and Burr 2,
that's the Berlin 1 and the Berlin 2 operatives, the chain of command.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure even I was losing track of who that really meant.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. They kind of gloss over that.
Mm-hmm. There's like a lingo thing. Like, if you don't catch on to certain lingo, you just have to move past it or look it up. You know what I mean? Spy lingo type stuff. Which is good because, like, it makes it feel more real, to be honest with you. Like, like they always say, terminology, is a key. Getting terminology right is always a key in these kinds of things. Like, it makes it feel.
And you know what?
Real.
There's only one way they could have gotten away with the exposition, and that would have been to make Lorraine not new to Berlin, but new to the spy game. And I think that her expertise is what gets her through.
Yeah.
To where she ends up. So, if you had her as green, and you would have like her Burr 1 explaining like, no, I'm Burr 1. I'm the number one for us here, and Burr 2 is my second. Like, there would be no place for her to be an expert or to have any skills at all.
All right, so we're at the 44-minute mark. Let's just get into the ending. And we'll just kind of keep it really kind of quick, and it won't be a lot to jump over. But what did you see that coming? The very, very end, where like, so
I'll say this when, and this is the other thing, like when the frog dies, which by the way, it took me like 5 references to be like the frog. Oh, that's the French guy.
Right,
Like,
right.
Just because it's not a thing for now. Like that's a thing for then.
Yeah.
But when they killed him, I was like, all bets are off. And I think that's when I started thinking like, all right, Percival's a fucking dick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely the whole realignment and understanding of Percival's position. But I mean the very, very end.
Oh, with it being her?
Yeah, when she gets on the plane. The list turns out not to be a thing, first of all.
Yeah.
Like,
which
I'm
all right with that, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of. But I guess I would want, like, the afterword of her getting on the plane, I would have rather that been, like, her going back to the debriefing room and just beating the shit out of those guys who sent her on this fucking, like, you sent me there for this. Like, did you just want me? Like, because I get the feeling she's like.
I mean, the implication is that she's a double agent. Is that she's a spy for Russia, or is that she's going to Russia?
No, I think the implication is that she's going there,
but not on assignment.
Or
if I remember correctly, she's like. She went off the grid, or she picked up another name or something to travel.
But I guess my whole thing is. It feels like she's a loose cannon throughout the whole thing.
Right.
And she feels like more of a mercenary at the end, where I don't know, based on, because she's got that contact that she makes with the merchant, right? And she's got a contact that she uses as the Frenchman. She is like the spy's spy. She really doesn't have an allegiance to country. She's now in it for herself. She's more of a mercenary spy is the way I took it. Like, because if there was a sequel, I don't know if it would be like her in Mother Russia or her back at MI6.
Right.
She just feels like, this is what I do and I can do it for anybody. And
well, they do mention that a lot of the spies were doing that. They were spies for their home country and trying to do merc stuff on the side.
Yeah.
So...
But she feels like the ultimate.
Oh yeah,
in Merc. Like,
yeah, well, it's, but it's also a thing too where I just feel like, it's an interesting twist and where it's like, oh, okay, so it almost recontextualizes things. So it's like, so was she like even playing them in like on every level? Like, was she like pretending to be naive?
I feel like she probably was. I mean, there's
like
that twist at the end is only set up because she's playing naive. Like she can't walk in and be like, I totally know Berlin.
Well, not only that. Well, I guess that's true too. But that's my thinking is that like, how much of it, like when is she really being truthful in the debrief? Not about events, but just about.
Oh, like when she's trying to piece it together?
Yeah, like, was she really more hip to the whole thing earlier on? Was she, you know what I mean? Or like these kinds of things. Like how deep does her lie go? You know what I mean?
I feel like, in hindsight, I think it's contextually possible she thought there was a list. But I think when she finally got there, because... she hadn't been there, so no matter double agent or not, she wasn't physically in that location, regardless of the intel. Like, you just don't know until you see it, kind of a deal. But with all the stuff going around, I feel like she finally was like, all right, you know what? Fuck this list. Like, I can do some other shit while I'm here.
Right.
And I feel like because the whole she's got a week. Like, I don't care who you piss off. You've got a week.
Right.
And then she buys herself time and she buys herself more time. And they're never on her ass for buying her time.
Yeah. Well, I think that, as far as that goes, she's got the upper hand because, they just need her to get the list. Okay, all right, fine. You need more time. Okay, whatever. And, she's doing her own little side investigation, so she's coming up with decent cover stories. Why they buy any of it, I don't know. I would think in the spy game, like, you just don't ever trust or believe anybody. And I'm sure, like, at a certain point, they would have stopped believing her too. I think she kind of references that too. Like, I can't keep trying to buy time.
Yeah, she does. And I feel like the other part of it is that debriefing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we needed to come back to it. Like, or some of those characters, like, or there's really no, like, scene where, like, the guys who were debriefing her are like, all right, I buy it, or all right, I don't. Like, at the end, like, after she leaves.
Right.
Because this story is, like, I don't know, 85% Lorraine, whether it's in the debriefing or in Berlin. Mm-hmm. And there's only, like, 15% where it's, like, other characters in play.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, it would have been nice for, like one page, just 3 panels of, like, she leaves the room and those guys are like, well, no, I don't fucking buy it, any of it. Or like, because they also had information the whole time that they were leading her on with.
Right. It would have been interesting to see them kind of just kick it around for even a second. Yeah. Like, what do you think? I don't know. I don't like her. And that's that, you know? So let's wrap it up there, buddy. What do you think?
I think that this is definitely like a 3-5 American Tacos.
American Tacos, that's our rating system over on the other show.
I would give it a recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't personally. I thought the second book was more intriguing.
Okay.
I think that, but that's not really based on character. I think it's just a different plot that I kind of liked a little bit better.
Okay.
It might be personal taste. But it also takes place, you know, as we were talking about, like the Cold War and the spy. It takes place 8 years earlier. It's like the heart of the Cold War.
And you're a spy guy. Like you eat this shit up all the time. Like you just.
I do.
You know, if it's got spies, you want 2 of it. It's worked out well. I was just gonna say it's worked out well then.
But no, I'm excited for the movie. But again, anyone who's still listening, whether you read the book or not, and you skip the spoiler section or you just listen through, like whether you like the movie or don't, this is a completely different animal. And while the story may be similar in that it's A, B, and C, how you get from A to B to C is completely different.
Yeah.
Like there's a possibility you could love the movie and hate the book, or hate the movie and love the book, or love them both differently. I mean, that's possible.
The visceral action is definitely going to be a whole thing for people to not really expect in the book.
Yes. Now, what about you, Bill? What are you giving it?
I'm going to give it a recommendation. I mean, I liked it a lot. I had fun with it. I like the twists that kind of came along. I don't really usually pick up spy stuff, so this was a fun deviation from the comics I'm normally reading. I was given a James Bond. There was a run of James Bond recently. I was giving that a go. That's more like in the modernized version. But this is so stripped down. Like, this is, if you're looking to read something that's like, you know, actual spy stuff, this is a good run. This is a good hit. And, you know, and rather than having it placed inside of the context it is in, of the, you know, the Cold War and the wall coming down, grounds it nice. It's not one of these spy stories that's about some, like, you know, made up country, and it's, you know, some agents, some, you know, it just kind of makes the whole thing just, you know, grounded and realistic, and helps to, you know, lock you into an era. Granted, it's by putting, you know, the wall central to the story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's good, because, you know what, by being black and white, you know, you do lose, in a sense, you know, the help of a color palette to remind you, oh, it's 1988, because, you know, you have these kinds of
Look
styles.
Look at that fashion.
Right. It's too much brown. That's the 70s.
Shoulder pads.
Ooh, remember those. But I feel like this is a nice, if you're looking for a way to kind of like just find something that's, hey, you know, I kind of like comics, but everything's about, you know, superheroes or crime, these kinds of things. This is a nice deviation. and it sticks to what it sets out to be. Just straightforward, dark, kind of double-crossy spy stuff.
And I feel like this could be a gateway. Like, if you like this, you probably want to dig into, like, the Len Dayton stuff, the Ian Fleming, like the legit book stuff, which is very different from, similar but different from, because this is straight up genre spy noir stuff, which honestly I can't remember the last time, or a modern movie that did spy noir very well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think it's like you said, like when you had to kind of go back to like Ipcris Files, like, you know what I mean? And it's a thing where it's like, even James Bond, which has kind of gotten more grounded recently, it's still not completely grounded. Like it because it doesn't get fantastic. It's not like we're dealing with robots in any way. But what I mean is that like we're dealing with, giant action set pieces and outlandish chase scenes and stuff like this. You know what I mean? These kinds of things. I did want to kind of give out. Ooh. You can hear that? Good. Because I don't know if people at home can, but this is a problem. I'm going to have to come back in and edit this now because I can hear it.
What is it?
I went to comicbook.com.
Yeah.
Well, it's their in-house video player because, every article has to have a video. It's one of these websites, because we need hits on our videos. So I'm going to start over right there. So one of the things I did want to kind of give is maybe a couple of recommendations if people are looking for like stuff that's kind of like this in comic form. One book they can check out is Velvet, which is by Ed Brubaker, and it's got a lot of spy stuff. So in this, it's a female spy. She's like a female James Bond, but she's older. And it's like, how do you get out of the game when you're kind of like past your prime a little bit? And all this stuff starts to come back to haunt you. So with this, but it kind of like the British spy is dead, and well, maybe I was wrong on that. Okay, so the setup on this, it says here, is that the elite British spy is dead, and a demure secretary must now claim his role in order to prove that she has been framed for his murder. Okay, so basically it's between like Bond and Moneypenny, where Moneypenny has to become the central character, you know what I mean? And she's on the run, and they're trying to kill her and stuff. It's funny because I had the first few issues, and I guess I just didn't recall it correctly at first. But that's by Ed Brubaker. He's really good. And I'm actually reading a book also by him called Sleeper, which is one of these ones where this guy, he's kind of like witness protection. Like he used to be a superhero or superpowered, and he's trying to keep it under wraps. Like it's a superhero spy mashup. It's got these 2 12-issue collections. He infiltrates a criminal organization and gets in way over his head. Sleeper builds tension as well as any film, blah, 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 blah. Stakes are high. It's kind of just giving that kind of an overview. I thought it might be something a little bit more in detail because I haven't finished it yet, but I kind of wanted to go over that one too. Ed Brubaker.
And I will say that I can also recommend The Coldest City, which is The Coldest Winter, which is the sequel prequel to this, also by Johnston. So
There you go. Can't recommend that more. All right, so how about we bring in a little music?
Is it time to leave the librarium?
It's time to vacate the librarium. Once again, this outgoing and incoming music was from the Coldest City book trailer. You can find that on YouTube if you want to take a look at the artwork and the panels. It's a little promotional trailer. You can check out The Coldest City at thecoldestcity.com.
Yes.
And you can find Agent Palmer
at agentpalmer.com. And you can find Bill Sweeney
at Wicked Theory on the Twitters. You can find Wicked Theory, our regular podcast, at wickedtheory.com and everywhere podcasts are given away for free.
Yes.
It's all your usual haunts like iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, blah, blah, blah. A whole bunch of them. Too many to list. I think that's it.
Yeah. Hey, Chief.
Yeah.
Am I dismissed?
No, you have to stay late. Someone's got to clean up. Thanks for listening. And maybe one of these days we'll open up the doors to the Librarium once again. Until then, keep on keeping on, I guess.
The Wicked Theory podcast is heard live every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern until whenever. Just go to mixler.com/wicked-theory. Mixler is MIXLR. Sign up to join the chat. Then click the follow button to get reminders whenever the show goes live. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, wherever good podcasts are given away for free, and at wickedtheory.com. You can support the show at patreon.com/wickedtheory. There you can get the after show if you miss it live. God forbid. Plus other exclusive episodes. As always, send your emails to podcast@wickedtheory.com.